I'm a lawyer, and I've had a lot of experience in court, and I can go through tremendous number of documents to find the 3 sentences you don't want me to find. And I went through about 200 books, and they were essentially using weasel words on accomplishments. And that's when the light went on. The Allies never really knew what Bomber Command accomplished. We had terrible intelligence inside Germany. So that's when it struck me. I bet the Germans know exactly what they accomplished. And so I turned to the Germans, and it turns out they knew exactly what Bomber Command accomplished, and it was far broader than we could ever have imagined.
An increasing number of 4-motored Halifaxes, Sterlings, and Lancasters were flown in each day to every airfield to receive...
The core group of Bomber Command, of course, were the Air Forces of Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the United Kingdom. America joined in 1942. And what's really, really interesting is how Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Britain post-war treated Bomber Command, and how the Americans treated Bomber Command. Ira Eaker, the American commander, the counterpart to the British Sir Arthur Harris, said that we're the little brother. And they really were, because our Lancasters and even our Halifaxes were superior to their planes. And we had the only bombs that were really effective, the tall boys and the Grand Slams. The Americans didn't even have the equipment to get these things off the ground, so we couldn't even give them to them. Bomber Command was really extraordinary in the United Kingdom, and Bomber Command the Americans created in a single year. They're called the Mighty Eighth. They had people like Jimmy Stewart and Clark Gable flying with them. Stewart played a major role. He was a master bomber of up to 150 bombers, etc. They think the Mighty Eighth was the greatest thing America ever did. They think these are the greatest heroes they ever had. And meanwhile, what do? We completely trash Bomber Command post-war. And that was a terrible tragedy that happened.
In the harbor outside Malta, Prime Minister Churchill salutes from a British man of war as he greets President Roosevelt on the bridge of an American warship.
And it was really happening towards the end of the war as well. And I think that's because, first of all, Churchill was actually becoming fairly depressed. Yalta was a disaster for Churchill. Roosevelt was dying. And Harry Truman had almost no idea of what was going on. I think he and Roosevelt may have had one lunch between Harry Truman becoming vice president and Roosevelt dying. So he was completely in the dark. Stalin, meanwhile, had taken over half of Europe. And so the whole issue of Bomber Command got very, very confused. Dresden became almost the signature of Bomber Command, and everything that we know about Dresden turned out to be wrong. But it meant that when the war was over, suddenly bombers weren't very fashionable. And I think for the bomber boys, it was double whammy. They themselves had been through horrors. I mean, my dad's squadron, 944 airmen in his squadron were killed. To do that, they had to wipe out the entire squadron 5.5 times. He started flying in April of 1944. In March of 1944, 45% of the whole squadron was killed. So the guys that actually survived this bloodbath came back totally traumatized, and they never had a picture of what they were accomplishing. They knew where they were assigned to go each night, etc., but they had no overview. And so when all of this terrible press started developing post-war, there wasn't anything to really disagree with. There wasn't anything to dispute it with. And so I think some of these bomber boys went to their graves thinking they were war criminals.